What if the most life-changing bond you ever formed began with a choice you never meant to make? When a lone freighter captain accidentally wins a mysterious alien companion at a crowded space auction, what starts as a joke turns into a journey of trust, healing, and a love that defies worlds. This isn't just a story about stars, it's about hearts learning to orbit together. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and show a little love with a thumbs up by liking the video. Now let's move toward this wonderful story. Captain Silas Gray leaned against the rail of the upper deck, watching the swirl of elegant buyers gather on the floor below. The auction hall inside Vallis Spire Station was massive, glittering with soft lights and framed by curved glass walls that looked out into space. Stars blinked in the darkness beyond, and the hum of chatter filled the air like a restless wind. Silas wasn't dressed for the event. Just a worn jacket, boots, and a pilot's belt with a few tools clipped on. He wasn't here to buy anything. He had come out of boredom, expecting to see rare creatures and maybe have a drink before returning to his freighter, the Driftlight. But then he saw her. At the center of the hall stood a quiet stage. Soft lights glowed along its edge. Inside a glass-like enclosure, an alien woman knelt on a smooth, round cushion. She was unlike anything Silas had seen before. Her skin was pale, almost like porcelain, and her hair fell like ink down her back. Thin silver lines curved along her cheeks. Some kind of tattoo, maybe. But it wasn't her looks that caught Silas's attention. It was her stillness. While others whispered and shifted in their seats, she sat calm, hands folded, her eyes wide and steady. She wasn't afraid. She looked ready. A deep voice echoed across the room. The next offering, the auctioneer announced, is a companion of the Oriel tradition, trained, willing, and bonded by choice. Starting bid, 10,000 credits. He tapped a silver gavel on the edge of the podium. Silas raised an eyebrow. Bonded by choice? He muttered. His voice was lost in the noise as suits and cloaks turned toward the stage. People whispered in low tones. Some looked interested, others curious. Silas chuckled to himself and, half-joking, raised a paddle he'd picked up at the entrance. 10,001, he said under his breath, amused at the idea of placing a fake bid. To his surprise, another bidder raised their hand immediately. 12,000, they said sharply. The room stirred. Silas blinked. Really? He shrugged, amused now. He lifted his paddle again. 13, the auctioneer looked his way. 13,000. Do I hear 15? A sharp voice behind him called out. 15,000. The laughter inside Silas was starting to turn into something else. His heart was beating faster. He raised his paddle once more. 20. The way. Auctioneer's eyes locked on his. The room went quiet. We have 20,000, he said slowly. Any further bids? Silas suddenly felt every eye on him. He tried to swallow, but his mouth was dry. What am I doing? He wondered. 20,500, someone called. Sold, the auctioneer shouted before anyone else could speak. His gavel hit the podium again. To Captain Silas Gray of the Driftlight. Silas stood frozen. What just happened? There was a light chime as the glass enclosure opened. Two guards stepped aside. The alien woman stood smoothly, her robes falling around her like soft waves. She walked forward with grace, stopped a few feet from Silas, and bowed deeply. Thank you, Captain, she said in a clear, warm voice. You have chosen me, and I am honored. Silas's mouth opened, but no sound came out. He stepped forward, without thinking. I didn't mean to. I thought this was just a joke. The woman smiled, not offended or hurt, but kind. I understand, she said, but I do not see it as a mistake. My people choose this life. It is not shameful. It is service freely given. You have given me a path I hoped for. Silas looked at her carefully. There was no fear in her eyes, no sadness, only calm. What's your name? He asked quietly. I am Nira, she replied. Of Oriel? Nira, he repeated. Her name was soft, gentle on the tongue. I'm Silas. Captain Silas Gray. Nira nodded once. Then I will walk with you, Captain Gray. They left the hall together. Silas barely noticed the murmurs behind them or the curious stares. His thoughts were a blur. This wasn't what he planned. He didn't believe in keeping anyone against their will. But she had spoken so clearly without hesitation. It made no sense, and yet, it felt right. Back aboard the Driftlight, he showed her to one of the spare rooms. It was simple, a bed, a small table, a window that opened to the stars. This is yours, he said, trying not to sound too awkward. If you want it. Nira stepped inside and turned once in a slow circle. It is beautiful, she said. Thank you. You're free to leave, you know, he added quickly. If you don't want to be here, I won't stop you. She sat on the bed with a peaceful expression. Captain, she said softly, this is my choice. You do not own me. I came to offer service to someone who treats me with honor. I believe that someone is you. Silas didn't know what to say to that. He only nodded, then left her to settle. And as he returned to the bridge, his mind kept spinning. He had come to an auction for a laugh, but somehow he had walked away with a companion from another world who didn't seem to want freedom, because to her, she already had it. He looked out at the stars and whispered, "What have I gotten myself into?" But deep inside, a part of him already knew. This was the beginning of something much bigger than either of them expected. The hum of the Driftlight echoed softly through the ship's narrow halls. Captain Silas Gray walked toward the crew quarters, still unsure about what he was doing. The freighter had always been quiet. Just him, a few maintenance bots, and the low music of deep space. Now, someone else was aboard. Someone who had entered his life in the strangest way, yet didn't feel like a stranger. He paused outside Nira's room and tapped the side panel gently. The door slid open. Nira stood near the small window, watching the stars. Her pale face was calm, lit by the glow of distant suns. She turned as Silas entered, offering him a gentle smile. "I hope the room's all right," he said, trying to keep his tone light. "It is more than enough." She replied, "I am at peace here." Silas shifted uncomfortably. "I just want to say again, you're not a prisoner. I know how it looked at that auction, but I didn't mean to bring you here that way." Nira walked over and sat on the edge of the bed. "Captain, I chose this path. On my world, we offer companionship not as property, but as purpose. I am not here because you own me. I am here because I believe in what this can be. A partnership." Silas sat across from her, leaning against the small table. "That word, partnership, it feels more real coming from you. Back home we don't talk like that. We trade, we deal. We don't often choose people with our hearts. Perhaps that is what you're meant to learn," Nira said, folding her hands. "And perhaps I will learn something from you too." They shared a quiet moment. Then Nira tilted her head. "Would you like to know about Oriel?" Silas nodded. "Yeah, I think I would." Nira stood and walked to a console. She pressed a few buttons and a soft light appeared in the air. A map formed, glowing points connected by silver lines. "These are the stars we use to find our way. We call them the singing lights." Silas leaned forward. "It looks like a dance." "It is," she said. "A dance of purpose and harmony. Our people believe that learning to follow the stars teaches you to follow your own heart." Silas stared at the map. "You really believe in this bond we've made, don't you?" "I do," Nira answered without hesitation. "But belief must be balanced. I must also prove useful. Show me your world, Captain. Let me learn what you know." He smiled a little. "All right. You ever fixed an engine coil?" Her eyes sparkled. "Not yet." Silas led her to the engine room. It wasn't much, some old wiring, a fusion core, and tools scattered like puzzle pieces. But it was his domain. He handed her a wrench. "This is a coil stabilizer. Right now, this panel's misfiring. Try to keep your hair out of it." Nira knelt beside him, listening closely. Her movements were quick, precise. In less than an hour, she had helped reroute the power flow and even improve the cooling system. Silas watched her with a mix of surprise and admiration. "You learn fast," he said. "My people train from childhood," she replied. "We learn patience before movement. It helps us focus." Later, they practiced zero-gravity movement in the ship's training bay. Silas demonstrated how to use the handholds to guide himself without spinning out. Nira followed him, graceful even in free fall. At first, she floated clumsily, bumping gently into a wall, laughing quietly. Then she adjusted, her body moving like a feather in wind. "You're a natural," Silas said, breathless from his own failed spin. "You're kind to say so," she replied, holding out a hand to steady him. They floated for a while, drifting near one another. There was no noise but their breathing and the soft hum of the bay. For the first time in a long time, Silas didn't feel alone. That night, back in their separate quarters, Silas sat at his small desk and stared out into space. His thoughts kept returning to her. Her calm, her curiosity, the way she listened, like every word mattered. He wasn't used to that. Most people in his life had come and gone. But Nira, she stayed. The next morning, Silas walked into the galley and found Nira already there. She had brewed something warm that smelled like cinnamon and earth. She handed him a mug without a word. He took a sip. "What is this?" "A morning blend from Oriel," she said. "We drink it before we begin our learning." Silas smiled. "Then let's learn." They spent the day exchanging lessons. Nira showed him how to calm pain with gentle pressure, points and glowing light from her hands. It was strange, almost magical, but it worked. In return, Silas taught her how to read Terran schematics and calibrate systems. She caught on fast. As they shared stories, laughter, and small discoveries, something shifted between them. The awkwardness faded. Silas no longer saw her as someone who arrived by accident. She had become a part of his ship, his routine, his life. And though they never said it aloud, both of them knew something new had begun. Not romance, not yet, but something just as powerful: trust. As the driftlight cruised through the quiet stretch of stars, two souls, so different, yet somehow the same, began orbiting each other. No longer strangers, no longer unsure, just two people trying to learn from one another, guided not by fate but by choice. The alarm sounded just after midday. Captain Silas Gray sat at the command console of the driftlight, quietly studying a new star chart Nira had helped him update, when the soft hum of the ship was broken by a sharp warning chime. Red lights pulsed across the console, and a message flashed across the screen. It was a distress signal from a colony transport ship stranded near the Loran belt. Silas tapped the controls, his brows furrowed. "Colony vessel Halcyon Echo," he read aloud. "Under attack. Pirates on board. Requesting immediate assistance." Nira appeared beside him, her steps quick but calm. "A colony ship?" she asked. Silas nodded. "Family vessel. Unarmed. Probably full of settlers." He stood, already making decisions in his mind. "We're close. If we go full burn, we can reach them in 10 minutes. "Then we must go," Nira said firmly. Silas glanced at her. She looked steady, focused. "It'll be dangerous," he warned. "There could be heavy fire. I don't expect you to fight." She placed a hand gently on his arm. "I won't stand by if people are in danger." For a moment, he hesitated. Then he gave a short nod. "Suit up." In the armory, Silas handed Nira a slim shielded bodysuit. Nothing heavy, just enough to protect against blaster shots. She changed quickly, her usual robes folded neatly in the corner. When she returned armored from neck to toe, she looked both delicate and strong. Silas checked her helmet seals and passed her a compact stun baton. "No weapons that kill," he said. "Just defense." Nira nodded. "That is all I need." The driftlight approached the colony ship through a stretch of drifting space dust, glowing faintly under the light of the nearest star. The Halcyon Echo was in bad shape. Engines damaged, one side scorched from laser fire. Small pirate fighters circled like scavengers. Silas opened comms. "This is Captain Silas Gray of the Driftlight. Break off now or be fired upon." A crackling voice answered, filled with mocking laughter. "Leave it alone, freighter boy, we've already picked our prize." Silas didn't reply. He gave the command. "Activate defense turrets." Small guns on the Driftlight's hull snapped into motion. With a soft whir, they began firing controlled bursts toward the pirate fighters. One fighter veered away, engines smoking. Another exploded in a quiet bloom of fire and metal. Silas turned to Nira. "We're creating a distraction. Now's our chance." They made their way to the airlock. As the doors opened, the void of space yawned before them, lit by the distant gleam of the colony ship. Using magnetic boots, they crossed the small gap between vessels. Nira moved beside him without fear, her breath even in the helmet. They entered the colony ship through a maintenance hatch. Inside, lights flickered. Smoke filled the corridors. They moved quickly, Silas leading with his blaster, Nira close behind, her eyes scanning for injured. They found the first group of colonists huddled behind a sealed door. A child cried softly. A woman tried to calm her. Nira knelt, placing a glowing hand on the wall. "I can open this," she whispered. "Stand back." The metal door hissed and clicked. With a quiet groan, it slid open. Silas helped the colonists out, guiding them toward the docking point. Nira stayed behind, checking one of the injured, a man with a deep burn across his arm. Her hands glowed as she pressed gently against the wound. The pain faded from his face. "You're safe now," she said quietly. Suddenly, footsteps echoed, behind them. A pirate trooper turned the corner, raising his weapon. Silas jumped forward, pulling Nira behind him. The blaster fired. The shot grazed Silas's shoulder, spinning him backward. Nira reached out, her hand shining like starlight. A burst of soft energy flared from her palm, striking the pirate's chest. He froze, dropped his weapon, and collapsed unconscious. Silas groaned, clutching his shoulder. Nira rushed to him, placing both hands on the burn. The light from her palms warmed the skin. Slowly, the pain dulled. "You all right?" she asked softly. He nodded, blinking. "Yeah, thanks to you." They moved deeper into the ship, helping more colonists, guiding them, healing wounds, and avoiding more patrols. In the medical bay, they found 2 doctors trying to treat a dozen injured, with barely any supplies. Nira stepped in, her healing touch calming patients, her voice steady. Silas patched holes in the systems, getting emergency lights and water flowing again. One child clung to Nira's robes. "Are you an angel?" she asked. Nira smiled gently. "No, little one, just a friend." When all the colonists had been evacuated to safety, Silas contacted the Driftlight. "Prepare to tow this ship back to the nearest station. We're bringing them home." Back aboard his freighter, Silas removed his helmet and looked at Nira. Her face was tired but bright. "You were incredible," he said, voice low. "You didn't just help, you saved them." "I did what I could," she replied him, "but you led the way." Silas sat heavily in the co-pilot's seat. "When I met you, I didn't understand your people. I thought you were something to own. But today, you stood beside me like no one ever has. You were brave, kind, strong." She sat beside him and touched his hand. "We are both learning," she said. Silas looked out at the stars. The colony ship drifted behind them, safe now. He turned to Nira, her hand still on his. "I'm glad you chose me," he said quietly. She smiled. "I still do." The journey to Oriel took 3 quiet days. Captain Silas Gray sat often in the observation deck, eyes fixed on the silver lines of starlight outside, feeling both excited and unsure. The ship had changed since Nira came aboard. It wasn't just the decorations she had added to the small lounge, flowers in glass jars, smooth stones from her world, and gentle lights that glowed with warmth. It was the feeling. The silence felt peaceful now, not lonely. He had spent so long drifting between stars, carrying cargo, fixing old systems, and never once thinking he might end up on a path like this. But Neera had changed that. She hadn't just joined his ship, she'd joined his story. The announcement came over the speaker in a soft voice. Approaching Oriel Station. Docking clearance granted. Silas stood and adjusted the long robe Neera had given him, a deep, blue fabric trimmed with silver. He felt a little ridiculous at first, but Neera's smile when she handed it to him made it impossible to refuse. She wore a matching robe in soft green, the color of early morning on her planet, she had said. When she entered the bridge beside him, he couldn't stop staring. She looked like something pulled from a dream, graceful, calm, glowing from within. Her pendant rested just above her heart, the one he had made from two pieces, a hope star from Earth and a constellation from Oriel, joined together like a promise. As they stepped off the ship, the station greeted them with light and music. It floated above Oriel's surface like a ring of crystal, open to the stars. Beings of many kinds walked its curved halls, but all paused to glance at the two figures walking side by side. Neera walked proudly, and Silas followed her lead, trying not to let his nerves show. At the far end of the walkway, a group of elders stood waiting. They wore robes that shimmered in the light, each marked with different symbols of their role. One elder stepped forward, her face kind and lined with age. "Welcome, Neera," she said with warmth. "You have returned, and not alone." Neera bowed deeply. "Elder Lys, this is Captain Silas Gray. He has honored our bond." Lys turned to Silas and studied him for a moment. "You crossed stars with her, protected life, and learned our ways, is this true?" Silas nodded, his voice steady. "Yes. At first I didn't understand, but I've seen her strength, her kindness. I see her now, not as a servant, but as a partner," the elder smiled. Then we asked nothing more. They were led into a circular chamber where soft light glowed from the floor. Neera stood across from Silas. The room was quiet. No audience, no speeches, just them. Neera spoke first, her voice clear. "When I knelt on the auction floor, I hoped someone would see more than a price. You did not mean to choose me, but you saw me. You gave me room to grow, and you listened. I choose to remain by your side, not out of duty, but out of trust." Silas felt his throat tighten. He stepped forward. "I made a mistake the day I bid for you. I didn't understand what a bond meant to your people, but you gave me the chance to learn. You showed me what respect feels like, what honesty looks like. I offer you my trust, my friendship, and my hand, not as your captain, but as your equal." Neera stepped closer and held out her hands. Silas took them. The pendant between them glowed softly, as if it understood the meaning in the room. The elder nodded. "The bond is witnessed. It is your path now." As they left the chamber, no applause followed, just a gentle music, soft like wind through leaves. They returned to the ship in silence, hand in hand. That night, on the observation deck, Silas placed a small box on the table. "I wanted to give you something more," he said. Neera opened it slowly. Inside was a ring made of braided metal, one strand from the engine of the driftlight, the other from her pendant chain. Together they formed a single loop. "It's not fancy," Silas said, rubbing the back of his neck. "But it's made from both our worlds." Neera picked it up gently, her eyes shining. "It's perfect." She placed the ring on her finger and smiled. "This is not just a gift. It is a promise." Silas looked at her and reached for her hand. "Whatever comes next, station life, long voyages, new planets, I want to share it with you." "I do too," she whispered. As the stars passed silently outside, Silas and Neera sat side by side. Not as strangers, not as captain and crew, but as two people who had chosen each other without force, without fear. In the quiet, they watched their reflections in the glass, two shapes wrapped in light, steady and warm. They had come from different worlds, from different pasts, but the future belonged to them both. The driftlight drifted on toward the next chapter with two hearts lighting the way.